The war dragon was known across many worlds. His name was Kor, and his wings stretched wider than any starship's hull. His scales were black as night, each one harder than iron. His eyes burned with golden fire, and his roar carried across skies, shaking mountains and seas. To the alien empire, Kor was their greatest weapon. To their enemies, he was a nightmare. Entire fleets scattered when he appeared. Entire armies surrendered when his shadow covered their camps. The empire had built its strength on his back, and for years no one had dared to rise against them. But Kor was not born to serve. Long ago, he had lived free on a forgotten world where dragons still soared over volcanoes and oceans. The empire had found him there. They came with ships that darkened the sky, capturing his kin. Most were killed. Kor was chained with a collar that dug into his scales and filled his blood with fire that was not his own. The device bent his will, twisting his power into a weapon. From that day, he became the empire's beast of war, dragged from battle to battle with no choice but to obey. For decades, he fought without rest. He burned cities. He broke fleets apart. He crushed every enemy set before him. His name became legend. Soldiers sang of him in fear, and children across the empire were told stories of the dragon who would destroy their enemies. But inside, Kor grew tired. His body carried countless wounds. His wings bore scars of lasers and blades. His heart grew heavy with a hunger for freedom. The day of his vanishing began like any other. The Empire had declared war on a coalition of free worlds. The enemy fleet gathered at the edge of a red star system. Their ships waited, thousands strong, forming a shield around a world that had sworn never to bow. The Empire sent Kor first, as always. Chains of light wrapped around his body. Soldiers cheered as he took flight, streaking toward the defenders like a black comet. When the battle began, the sky filled with fire. Cannons thundered, missiles screamed, and beams of energy slashed through the void. Kor flew at the front, tearing through warships as if they were made of paper. His flames melted armor. His claws ripped through steel. The defenders fought bravely, but the sight of him broke their courage. One by one, their ships fell apart. The Empire's victory seemed certain. Then it happened. As the enemy fleet began to crumble, Kor slowed. He hovered in silence, wings spread wide, his shadow covering wreckage and fire. His eyes, once blazing, dimmed. The soldiers who watched from their ships grew confused. He did not strike the last of the enemy. He did not roar. He simply turned away. The commanders shouted through the control links, ordering him to continue. The collar glowed bright, searing his flesh, but still he did not move as they wished. Instead, with one mighty beat of his wings, he soared upward, past both fleets, past burning wreckage, and into the void beyond. At first, the Empire believed it was a trick. Perhaps he was circling to strike again. But minutes passed, then hours. Kor did not return. He vanished into the dark between the stars, his massive form swallowed by the endless night. Panic spread through the Empire's ranks. Without him, their advantage crumbled. The enemy fleet, though bloodied, saw their chance. They rallied, pushing the Empire back. A battle that should have been a swift victory turned into a retreat. For the first time in generations, the Empire lost ground. Across the stars, whispers spread. Some claimed the dragon had been destroyed by a secret weapon. Others said he had grown tired of war and abandoned his masters. A few even believed he had returned to his hidden world, seeking the last of his kind. No one truly knew. The Empire searched, sending scouts and hunters to every corner of known space. They tracked energy trails, studied old legends, and interrogated prisoners. Still, the dragon remained unseen. For the Empire, it was not only a loss of power but a wound to their pride. Their enemies mocked them, saying their greatest weapon had fled. Their soldiers grew uneasy, knowing the Empire's victories had relied on Kor's might. Without him, battles would be longer, bloodier, and uncertain. The Emperor himself raged, demanding the dragon be found at any cost. Yet far from the warfront, beyond the reach of both Empire and Coalition, a small blue planet circled a quiet yellow star. On its fields, a young man named Rian worked in silence. He had never left his world. He had never seen the wars that raged among the stars. His life was simple, filled with soil, water, and the changing of seasons. He knew nothing of dragons, empires, or lost legends, but destiny was already moving toward him. In the deep forests near his home, the earth shuddered. Birds fled from the trees and animals scattered in fear. Something vast had fallen from the sky, hidden in the shadows. Smoke curled upward between the branches, faint and strange, and though Ryan did not yet know it, The vanished war dragon rested there, far from the Empire, far from war, carrying scars older than Ryan could imagine. The galaxy believed Kor had vanished forever. The Empire searched for their beast. The Coalition prayed the monster would never return. But fate had chosen a different path. The dragon was not gone. He was waiting, and his waiting would soon bring him to the feet of a human who had never lifted a sword, yet carried a strength no chain could break. The sun rose slowly over the quiet fields of Ryan's world. Golden light spread across the land, painting the sky in soft colors. The farmer was already awake, as he always was. His life followed the rhythm of the land. He watered the soil, pulled weeds from his crops, and carried buckets of water from the stream. His life was simple, but it gave him peace. Yet on this morning, the air did not feel the same. The birds that usually sang at dawn were silent. The forest that bordered his farm seemed to hold its breath. Even the breeze felt heavier, as if it carried a secret. Ryan remembered the tremor from the night before. He had felt the ground shake. He had seen the faint smoke rising between the trees. At first he thought it was only a storm or maybe a falling tree. But storms left thunder, and trees left echoes of cracking wood. This had been different. The silence that followed had unsettled him. When he finished his morning work, curiosity pulled him toward the forest. He followed a narrow path between tall grass, his steps careful and steady. The trees grew thicker as he walked, and the air grew warmer. The deeper he went, the more he noticed signs of disturbance. Branches were broken. The earth was scarred with long marks, as if something heavy had dragged across it. Strange ash clung to the leaves. At last he reached a clearing. There, hidden beneath the shadows of tall trees, lay a sight so vast that his breath caught in his chest. The war dragon. Kor was curled upon the ground like a mountain of scales and wings. His body filled the clearing, his massive tail stretching far into the undergrowth. His wings were folded tight, their edges torn and scarred. Smoke drifted faintly from between his scales, and his breath rose in heavy waves of heat. His golden eyes were closed, but even in rest they seemed to glow. Ryan froze where he stood. He had never seen such a creature. He had never imagined one could exist. The sheer size of the dragon was beyond belief. His head alone was larger than Ryan's home. His claws were long and sharp, sunk deep into the earth. His teeth, half hidden behind scaled lips, gleamed like polished blades. Fear filled Ryan's body. Every instinct told him to run, but something stronger than fear kept him rooted. He saw not only the danger of the beast, but also the weakness in its form. The dragon was not standing tall. He was not roaring or striking. He was wounded. His scales bore deep cracks. Old burns lined his chest. Fresh wounds oozed faint smoke, as though fire still lived inside them. The mighty creature looked exhausted, as if every breath was a struggle. Slowly, carefully, Ryan stepped back. But as he did, the dragon stirred. A single golden eye opened, glowing like a distant star. It fixed on Ryan, sharp and unblinking. The farmer froze, his heart racing. He expected a roar, a burst of flame, a swipe of the claw that would end him. But nothing came. The dragon only watched. Ryan swallowed hard. He raised his hand slowly, showing he carried no weapon. He whispered words he did not expect to matter. "I will not hurt you." The dragon's eye narrowed, but still he did not move. His chest rose and fell, each breath heavy with weariness. The glow of his eye softened, and for a brief moment Ryan felt something strange, an emotion that was not his own. The dragon looked tired, not just in body but in spirit. Ryan did not know why, but pity stirred in his heart. This beast could destroy him with ease, yet here it lay, broken and alone. Against his fear, he took a step forward. Then another. He stopped a safe distance away, close enough to see the cracks in the dragon's scales. "You are hurt," he said quietly. "You need rest." The dragon blinked, and a low sound rumbled from his chest. It was not a roar, not a threat. It was something softer, like a deep sigh carried on the wind. Ryan stood there for a long time, watching. His mind told him to flee, but his heart told him to stay. At last he turned back toward his home. He filled a wooden bucket with water and carried it to the clearing. His hands shook as he set it on the ground. The dragon's eye followed his every move. When Ryan stepped back, the massive head lowered. With surprising care, the dragon touched the bucket with his snout. The water spilled, and the beast licked it from the earth. Ryan let out the breath he had been holding. The dragon had accepted his offering. That night, he could not sleep. His mind replayed the sight again and again. The great body, the wounded wings, the golden eye that held no hatred. Questions filled his thoughts. Where had the dragon come from? Why was it here, so far from the stars? And why had it spared him? The next day, Rian returned with more water and food. He brought fruits, though he doubted a dragon would eat them. He laid them at the edge of the clearing and stepped back. Once again, the golden eye opened. Once again, the dragon accepted. Days passed. Each time Ryan came, the dragon moved a little more. At first, it only lifted its head. Then it shifted its wings. Then it stood for short moments, testing its strength. Yet it never left the clearing. It seemed to trust that Ryan would return. The farmer began to speak as he worked. He told stories of the land, of the changing seasons, of the river that sang through the valley. He spoke of his parents who had once worked the same soil, and of the stars he sometimes watched at night. He did not know if the dragon understood, but it listened. Its eyes followed him, and sometimes a deep rumble rose from its chest like distant thunder. Ryan grew less afraid. He began to see not a monster, but a living being burdened by wounds. He noticed the way the dragon lowered its head when he spoke, as if hearing a voice that soothed it. He saw how it folded its wings around itself like a cloak of protection. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Rian stood beside the dragon longer than usual. The air was warm with the heat that radiated from its body. He looked up at its massive form and spoke softly. "You are not only strong. You are tired, but you are safe here." The dragon made no reply in words, but it shifted closer, curling its body tighter. Its massive head lowered to the ground, resting near Ryan's feet. The earth shook with the weight, yet the gesture was gentle. Ryan's heart pounded. The war dragon, the creature who could burn armies, had chosen to rest beside him. He did not know why. He did not understand how. But in that moment, a bond was born. One not of chains or commands, but of quiet trust. Far away, the Empire still searched. Their ships scanned systems. Their soldiers hunted shadows, and their commanders swore to bring back their lost weapon. They believed Kor to be gone, hidden in some forgotten corner of the galaxy. They could not imagine that their dragon had chosen a new path. For in a small forest on a quiet world, the war dragon had found something he had never known before. Not fear, not command, not chains, but kindness. And so the beginning of their bond was written in silence, in water carried by human hands, and in the simple choice of a dragon to rest at the feet of one who had shown him mercy. The forest grew quieter with each passing day. Where once the sound of birds and animals had filled the air, now much of the life stayed away, driven by the presence of the war dragon. Yet for Ryan, the clearing where the beast rested became a place he returned to again and again. At first, his visits had been careful and filled with fear. Each step closer to the dragon had felt like stepping toward death. But as days turned into weeks, something inside him changed. The fear remained, but it was no longer the strongest feeling. Curiosity, wonder, and a strange sense of trust grew stronger. The dragon, too, had changed. When Ryan first found him, the beast was wounded, silent and distant. Now his eyes followed the young farmer closely whenever he entered the clearing. His head lowered more often to meet Ryan's gaze. His body no longer curled as tightly as before, for he seemed less afraid of being attacked. Rian had begun to speak more boldly during his visits. "You are strong," he said one morning, placing a bucket of water at the edge of the clearing. "But strength is not all that matters. Sometimes a kind heart is stronger than claws." The dragon tilted his massive head, as though puzzled by the words. A deep rumble rolled from his chest, not threatening but almost thoughtful. Ryan laughed softly, surprised by his own boldness. "I do not know if you understand me. Perhaps you only hear noise when I speak, but I think you listen, and that makes me feel less alone." The dragon blinked slowly. In that gesture, Ryan thought he saw an answer. Each day, Ryan brought food and water. He brought fruit, fish, and sometimes meat from animals he hunted in the forest. Though he never saw the dragon eat as a man would, the offerings were never wasted. The dragon accepted them with quiet dignity, lowering his head to take what was given. The bond deepened through simple acts. When Rian worked in the clearing, the dragon watched. When Ryan sat at the edge of the trees, the dragon stretched one wing slightly toward him, as though reaching out. When Rian spoke of his parents, his childhood, and his dreams, the dragon listened. Rian began to notice the scars that covered the beast's body. Some were fresh, burned deep into the scales. Others were old, faded, but never forgotten. He wondered about the battles the dragon had fought, the wars he had endured, and the suffering he had carried. "You did not choose those scars," Rian said one evening, as the dragon lay with his head resting on the ground. "Someone forced them upon you. You fought not for yourself, but for others who chained you. That is not fair." The dragon's eyes glowed faintly in the fading light. He made a low sound, half sigh and half growl. Ryan did not know what it meant, but he felt it was an answer. For the first time, Rian reached out his hand. His fingers shook, but he placed them on the edge of a black scale near the dragon's snout. The scale was hard, cold at first, but warm beneath. The dragon did not move away. Instead, he lowered his head further, allowing the touch. A thrill passed through Ryan. This was no ordinary creature. This was a being of fire and legend, trusted by none, feared by all. Yet here he was, allowing the touch of a simple farmer. From that moment, their bond was no longer only in words or offerings. It was in trust. Days stretched into weeks. The dragon grew stronger. His wings healed slowly, their tears mending with time. His steps became steadier, though the ground shook with each movement. He stretched his body more often, testing his strength. Sometimes he rose to his full height, towering above the trees, and Rian felt both awe and pride. The villagers from far away began to whisper of strange signs. Some spoke of tremors in the earth. Others claimed to see shadows like mountains passing across the sky. No one dared to enter the forest. Only Rian knew the truth, and he kept it close to his heart. One afternoon, as he worked in the fields, he saw the dragon from a distance. Kor stood on the ridge of the forest, wings spread wide. For a moment, the great beast looked ready to fly, to return to the stars. But then he folded his wings and settled back down as if choosing to remain. Ryan smiled to himself. The dragon had a choice now. He was no longer forced by chains or commands. He stayed because he wanted to. Sometimes Rian wondered why the dragon had not left. Perhaps it was because of his wounds. Perhaps he needed more time. Or perhaps in some way he had chosen this place. Chosen Ryan. The bond grew even stronger one evening when a storm swept across the land. Lightning split the sky and rain fell in sheets. Ryan's small home shook under the wind. Fearing for the dragon, he rushed through the storm to the clearing. There he found Kor standing tall, wings outstretched, facing the storm without fear. Lightning flashed across his scales, making him shine like a living star. Ryan called out, his voice nearly lost in the thunder. "You should rest. The storm will pass." To his amazement, the dragon lowered one wing to shield him from the rain. Ryan stood beneath the massive arch of black scales, dry and safe. For the first time, he laughed with joy, the sound carrying into the storm. "You care," he whispered. "You care for me." The dragon rumbled in reply and the storm raged on, but in that moment Ryan knew their bond was no longer fragile. It was real. Yet beyond the peace of the farm and the forest, the galaxy stirred with unrest. The Empire had not given up its search. Scouts combed the stars, chasing every rumor. Soldiers whispered that the dragon had betrayed them. Commanders feared what would happen if he was found by others. But none of them knew the truth. None of them imagined that the fiercest beast of war had found rest beside a human farmer. In the quiet of the clearing, Ryan and Kor sat together as the storm passed. The air grew calm again. The night filled with the sound of crickets and the gentle rustle of leaves. The dragon curled close, his massive body forming a wall of warmth and safety. Ryan leaned against his side, the scales firm and steady beneath him. For the first time in many years, the dragon slept without fear. And for the first time in his life, Ryan dreamed of a future not of loneliness, but of companionship. The bond was unlikely. A farmer and a dragon, two lives that should never have crossed. Yet fate had woven their paths together. What began as fear had grown into trust. What began as chance had become something far greater. The world around them still turned, wars still raged among the stars, and the Empire still searched. But here in a quiet corner of the universe, a friendship was born. A friendship that would soon be tested in ways neither of them could yet imagine. The bond between Ryan and the war dragon grew stronger with each passing day. What began as fear had turned into trust, and what began as trust was slowly becoming something even greater. The dragon had once been called a weapon, a beast of war, but to Ryan he was more than that. He was a companion, a guardian, and perhaps even a friend. Kor, for his part, no longer seemed like the same creature who had terrified armies across the stars. When he rested in the clearing, his golden eyes softened whenever Rian appeared. When Rian spoke, Kor listened, even though the farmer's words were simple. There were times when the dragon lowered his massive head to the ground, as if humbling himself before the only being who treated him with kindness. But peace never lasts forever. Far above, in the vast sea of stars, the Empire still searched. They had not forgotten their greatest weapon, nor had they forgiven his vanishing. Scouts were sent across countless systems. Hunters were dispatched with orders to capture or destroy. The Empire feared what might happen if the dragon fell into other hands. And more than that, the Emperor feared the shame of losing the creature who had made his armies powerful. Weeks passed before the search reached the small blue world where Ryan lived. A patrol ship entered the system, scanning every planet and moon. The ship carried only a small group of soldiers, but they were well armed and loyal to their orders. When their instruments caught a faint trace of unusual energy near Ryan's forest, they knew they were close. On the ground, Ryan felt the first sign of danger one evening as the sun set. He stood in his field watching the horizon, when streaks of light crossed the sky. At first he thought they were falling stars, but then he noticed the steady path they followed and the way they slowed as they neared the land. His heart tightened. He had never seen a ship from the stars, but he knew these were not stars at all. He rushed into the forest, calling for Kor. The dragon was already awake, his golden eyes glowing brighter than usual. He had sensed the threat long before Ryan. The air around him burned faintly and his wings stretched in readiness. "They are coming for you," Ryan whispered, his voice trembling. "The ones who chained you." Kor lowered his head, the fire in his throat rumbling like thunder. He understood. The soldiers landed their ship near the forest edge. They marched in formation, carrying weapons that glowed with sharp light. Their leader, tall and armored, raised a hand and ordered his squad forward. "Search the area," the leader commanded. "The beast is here. The Emperor wants him alive." The soldiers spread out. They moved through the trees with practiced precision, their weapons ready. Some cut down branches, others set scanning devices in the soil. Step by step they closed in on the clearing. Ryan hid behind a tree, his heart pounding. He had no weapon, no armor, nothing but the will to protect the dragon who had become his friend. For a moment he thought of running, but the thought vanished. If he left, the dragon would be alone. He could not allow that. He stepped into the open, his voice loud and clear. "You must leave this place," he shouted. "There is nothing for you here." The soldiers turned in surprise. They had not expected to find a human standing before them, unarmed and fearless. The leader raised his weapon, aiming it at Ryan. "Move aside, farmer," the leader said coldly. "We are not here for you." "We are here for the dragon," Ryan stood firm. "He is not your weapon anymore. He is free." The soldiers laughed, but their laughter died quickly as the ground shook. From the shadows of the clearing, Kor stepped forward. His wings spread wide, his body towering above the trees. His golden eyes blazed with fury, and his roar split the air, sending birds flying in terror. The soldiers froze for a moment, their courage faltering. Many of them had heard stories of the dragon, but to stand in his presence was different. Fear gripped their hearts. "Fire!" the leader shouted. Beams of energy shot through the air, striking Kor's scales. But the beams only left faint marks. The dragon roared again, a sound so powerful that the soldiers stumbled. Then he unleashed his fire. Flames brighter than the sun poured from his mouth, sweeping across the forest floor. The soldiers scattered, their formation broken. Ryan shielded his face from the heat, but he did not move away. He knew the dragon's fury was not aimed at him. He watched as Kor fought not as a chained beast, but as a free guardian. Every movement carried purpose, not forced by commands, but chosen by his own will. The leader tried to rally his men. "Do not retreat! Hold your ground!" But it was too late. The dragon's claws tore through their weapons. His tail swept across the ground, knocking soldiers aside. Flames consumed the machines they had brought. The leader himself was thrown back, his armor cracked and burning. In less than a minute, the patrol was broken. Survivors fled toward their ship, their courage shattered. The leader staggered after them, shouting orders that no one obeyed. Kor stood tall in the clearing, his wings spread wide. Smoke and ash rose around him, but his eyes burned with triumph. For the first time, he had fought not for the Empire, but against it. Ryan approached slowly, his voice soft. "You did not fight because they forced you. You fought because you chose to protect." The dragon lowered his head, resting it near Ryan's feet. The golden eyes softened once again, and a low rumble filled the air, not of anger but of pride. Far above, the patrol ship lifted into the sky and fled. Its crew carried news of their defeat. They would return to the Empire with stories of a dragon who had turned against his masters. The Emperor would rage, the soldiers would whisper, and the galaxy would tremble at the thought of the war dragon now standing with a human. But in the quiet clearing, none of that mattered yet. What mattered was the bond that had been tested and proven strong. Ryan and Kor had faced the Empire together, and they had stood as one. The night grew calm again. The fire faded, leaving only glowing embers. The forest would heal in time. Ryan stood beside the dragon, his hand resting against the warm scales. "You are not alone anymore," he said softly. "As long as I live, I will stand with you." The dragon's chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm, his breath warm against the earth. For the first time, he felt not like a weapon, not like a beast, but like a friend. And so the legend began to take shape. The war dragon, once chained by the Empire, now stood free beside a human. The Empire had hunted him, but they had only revealed the truth. He was no longer theirs to control. The stars still burned above, the Empire still plotted, and wars still raged across distant worlds. But here in this small place, a new story had begun, a story of choice, of trust, and of a bond that no chain could ever break. The forest had grown quiet after the battle. Ash still floated through the air, glowing faintly in the fading light. Broken branches lay scattered, and the ground bore the marks of fire and claws. Yet in the middle of the destruction there was peace. The dragon lay stretched in the clearing, his scales glimmering faintly under the moonlight. Beside him stood Ryan, his clothes burned in places, his face covered with dust, but his spirit strong. The patrol ship had fled back into the sky. It carried with it the shame of defeat, but also the truth. The war dragon was no longer the Empire's weapon. That truth would spread. It would travel across the stars, and in time the Empire's enemies would learn it. The dragon had chosen a human, and the Empire had lost what they thought was theirs forever. Ryan did not know all of this yet. He only knew that the world he loved had been touched by forces far greater than anything he could imagine. He looked at the dragon, his voice quiet. "They will come again," he said. "They will not forget." The dragon raised his head and looked toward the stars. His golden eyes reflected the light of distant worlds. He seemed to understand. He knew the Empire's pride would never allow them to leave him in peace. But for now he curled once more at Ryan's feet, his massive body like a wall of protection around the small human. The spreading rumor far away, in the corridors of the Empire, news of the patrol's failure spread like fire. Soldiers whispered of the farmer who stood unarmed before them, of the dragon who chose to defend him, and of the flames that burned with fury not for conquest but for freedom. The Emperor's rage shook the halls of his palace. He struck fear into his generals, demanding answers, demanding vengeance. Yet even his words could not erase the fear that now gripped his soldiers. They had seen the war dragon fight under chains, but now they feared him even more as a free creature who had chosen his own path. Whispers reached rebel worlds as well. Across distant systems, voices rose with hope. If a simple human could win the heart of the most feared beast, perhaps they too could break the chains of the Empire. Hope began to grow, and with hope came courage. The quiet days on Earth. Days passed in strange calm. Ryan returned to his fields, though many crops were burned. He worked patiently, planting seeds again, his hands steady. The dragon often lay nearby, watching. Sometimes he hunted far away, his shadow crossing the skies. But always he returned before nightfall to rest at Ryan's side. The villagers from nearby towns soon noticed the change. They spoke of seeing a giant shadow circling the mountains. Some said it was a monster, others said it was a guardian. Children ran to the fields hoping to catch a glimpse. At first fear spread among the people, but when they saw that Ryan lived unharmed and when they noticed no harm came to their homes, their fear softened. Some came to Ryan and asked questions. Was the creature dangerous? Was it his servant? Was it planning to destroy them? Ryan shook his head. "He is not my servant," he said. "He is my friend. He will not harm you if you do not harm him." The people listened. Slowly they began to believe. They saw the way the dragon lowered his head when Ryan spoke. They saw how he guarded the valley but never attacked without reason. Respect replaced fear. Stories began to spread from mouth to mouth. The first song one evening, when the sun sank low and painted the sky with gold, a traveling singer came to the village. He had heard the whispers of a dragon resting at a farmer's feet. He carried a small instrument and a voice strong enough to reach every ear. That night he sang the first song of Rian and the War Dragon. He told of how the Empire had lost their greatest weapon, how the Beast of Fire had chosen a human, and how kindness had broken chains stronger than iron. The villagers listened and their hearts were moved. The song carried far beyond the valley. Travelers carried it to other towns, then to other lands. Before long, the tale spread faster than the soldiers of the Empire could chase it. The return of the soldiers, of course, the Empire did not rest. Months later, they sent more ships, larger and stronger. This time, they did not send a patrol. They sent an army. Their ships darkened the sky as they descended upon Earth. Their orders were clear: capture the dragon and punish anyone who stood with him. The villagers gathered in fear. They had no weapons strong enough to resist. Ryan stood at the edge of his field, watching the ships approach. His heart pounded, but he did not step back. He looked at the dragon beside him. "This is our choice now," he said softly. "They want to chain you again. Will you fight with me?" The dragon gave a low, deep roar that shook the earth. His wings spread wide, casting a shadow over the land. He would not return to chains. He would fight not because he was forced, but because he had chosen. When the soldiers marched forward, expecting an easy victory, they faced something they could not understand. The villagers, inspired by Ryan, stood together. They carried only simple tools, but their courage burned bright. Above them, the dragon roared, and his fire lit the sky. The Empire's army fought with weapons of light and machines of steel, but their strength faltered before the unity of dragon and human. The battlefield became a storm of fire, but through it all, Ryan stood firm, and the dragon fought at his side. At last, the Empire's army broke. Their ships fled once again into the stars, leaving behind wreckage and fear. This time, the defeat was even greater. This time, the Empire realized they were no longer fighting a beast. They were fighting a legend. The beginning of a legend. When peace returned, the people gathered around Ryan and the dragon. They cheered not only for their survival, but for what it meant. A farmer had stood against an empire. A dragon had chosen friendship over slavery. Together, they had proven that power was not only in weapons or armies, but in trust and courage. Stories grew larger with each telling. In some, the dragon's wings were said to cover the whole valley. In others, Ryan's words alone made the soldiers flee. Each story added more wonder, but all carried the same truth. The dragon was free, and he stood with humanity. Ryan never thought of himself as a hero. He returned to his fields, planting seeds once more. Yet he knew the world had changed. The dragon was no longer a secret. His presence had become a sign of hope for many, and a warning for the Empire. On quiet nights, Ryan would sit by the fire looking at the stars. The dragon lay nearby, his golden eyes glowing softly. Ryan would whisper, "We are only at the beginning, my friend. More trials will come, but we will face them together." And the dragon would rumble softly as if agreeing. Across the stars in the far reaches of space, rebels began to paint banners with the shape of a dragon. Secret meetings were held where songs of Ryan were sung. Across colonies, people whispered that if a farmer and a beast could defy the Empire, then so could they. The Empire, for all its power, could not silence the tale. The more they tried to crush it, the stronger it grew. What had begun as a single act of kindness in a forest clearing had become something much greater. It had become a spark that lit countless hearts. A final quiet moment one evening, months after the second battle, Ryan stood on a hill overlooking his fields. The land was healing, green shoots rising from the soil. Beside him, the dragon curled, resting after a long flight. Ryan placed a hand on the warm scales. "Do you know what they call us now?" he said with a small smile. "They call us a legend." The dragon's golden eye opened, shining with a soft glow. He gave a deep, calm breath as if to say that legends did not matter. What mattered was the bond they shared and the path they would walk together. The stars shone above, countless and bright. The Empire still waited beyond them, proud and angry. Battles would come, dangers would rise, but for now there was peace. For now, a human and a dragon rested side by side, not as master and weapon, but as friends. And so the legend truly began,